Hi everyone, welcome to Bello's Designs. My name is Catherine and today I am going to show you how I made this card that I'm calling Snowy Glen. This is my third card in our team series of the 12 tutorials of Christmas, and I have created it using some cardstock and papers from my stash along with Elements Ink and all cardio stamps. Let's talk about the supplies you'll need to make this card. Today we'll be using the smallest jumping stag from Stately Stags in cardio stamps. The Nicicles and Icicles, I'll be using this branch right here up near the top. From the Christmas Scenery 1 set, I'll be using the trees behind the fence and the small pine trees in the background. And then from the Christmas Sentiments set, we'll be using the stamp that reads Christmas Blessings. In addition to that, I'll be using VersaFine Clair and Nocturne for all of my stamping. For my backgrounds, I'll be using a variety of Elements inks. I have Violet Chalk, Spun Candy, Blue Atoll, and Pine. I'll also be using Liquid Pearls in Raspberry, a silver sparkle pen, and a variety of blending brushes. For cardstock, we'll be using 6 1/4 by 4 1/4 hot press watercolor cardstock. If you have any multifarious or smooth multimedia cardstock at home, that will work well also. And actually, since we didn't use any water techniques on this card that we'll be making today, you don't need any special kind of cardstock. Anything heavy duty that you use for a regular card topper will do. I just happen to have a bunch of these cut out, so that's what I'll be using. I have a piece of colored cardstock in 4 5/8 by 6 5/8, and then a card base in 5 by 7. Let's pull it all together and get started. I'll start by lining up my stencil using the top piece of the ornament. So I'm going to line that up as close to the top as I can get it. And then what I want to do next is just cover up the open spaces with some tape. And I'm going to begin with the Pine Elements Ink. Okay. Now what I want to do is reposition it, because I really would prefer not to have the gap that's on my stencil on that top of that light bulb showing. So I'm just going to move it up. Once again, just checking to make sure it's as centered as I can get it here, and then also covering this opening up here at the top. This time, I'm going to tape it down at the top of my stencil. So just once again, covering that opening that's right there. And then I want to cover the opening here, here, and one more piece across the top. You might have a low tack tape. I just use the Post-it tape that I have on hand. Now I'm just going to do the very top of my bulb. All right, let's take a peek. So that's what I was looking to achieve, is having no gap right there. I'm going to reuse my tape, but first I want to just wipe off my stencil and make sure I don't get any ink anywhere I don't want it. Okay. For the wires, I prefer not to use the bigger one, and I'm going to just bring my stencil back, and I'm going to use the smaller of them. So once again, really just taping up those parts I don't want to accidentally get any ink on, and coming right back in with my stencil brush and filling in that wire. There we go. And now I'm going to do the other side. There we are. All right, now I'm going to get this tape that has green ink all over it just right out of my way. Make sure you clean off your stencil because we don't want to mix our colors or make our project look muddy in any way. And I'm done with the pine, so I'm going to put that away. Now I'm going to line up the bulb. So once again, just covering the top of that and checking. So I'm going to overlap it just a bit at the top. And then I'm checking the sides, just visually checking to see that my light bulb is centered. And I'll take another piece of tape and I'm going to just place it over the top, mostly to hold it down. Take out a little bit more, and I'm going to cover the opening here. Now for this, I just want to be able to see the outline of my ornament later. So what I decided to do was use my Elements Ink in Blue Atoll. It's also one of my older ink pads, so it's not super juicy, and anytime I use it, I'm just getting a very light coverage. So I'm just going to come around and add a little bit of blue around the outside of the bulb, being careful not to get any on the bottom. And as I said, this really is just for my use later, although any blue will blend in. All right, for now, I'm going to put the ink away. And it's time to start stamping. So I'm going to begin with the fence and the trees, and I'm going to stamp that part of my design using my Nocturne ink. And I'm going to butt that right up to the side of my light bulb. And then I'm going to next stamp my row of pine trees, and I chose the smaller ones from this set. There are bigger ones. If you wanted to use the bigger ones, you could. Almost did that by accident. Let me just get that right out of the way. We're still stamping in Nocturne. And I'm just going to ink those up and put them up here in this corner because I want them to be in the background. There we are. All right, let's come in and stamp the stags. So everything on this card really is stamped using the Nocturne ink. I'm going to put this little guy down here towards the left corner. And then the other one, the jumping deer, is just going to go a little more towards the background. Like so. All right. The next step is to start blending the sunset. So I'm going to start with my Elements ink in Spun Candy. And I'm going to keep it towards the top of the sky. And when you mix that with the blue at all, you're going to get like a little bit of purple. That's okay. We're going to actually add a little bit of violet chalk after, so it'll be just fine. And then maybe a little bit just under my stag. Just a little hint of that. And a little under this guy. Okay. I'm going to put that away and bring in my Elements in Violet Chalk. Make sure it's not too bright because we can always add more later. And just add it to the background. At this point, I'm going to bring in my number 3 brush and add a little bit of shadow underneath my fence. Underneath my trees in the back. And under my stags. And I'll touch up this little guy's back leg. Just fill it in a bit. Right, now we're going to take the stencil away, and we can see that we have a nice outline of the light bulb. At this point, I'm going to begin stamping the pine boughs from the Nicicles and Icicles sets, and we'll do that stamping in the Nocturne. What I want to do is get a piece of scrap paper just to cover the top of my light bulb, and I'm going to begin just going around the image with the stamp. So starting at the top, I'm going to use just I don't want to get that stem, so I'm going to use just the ends of my branch. And we'll do probably 3 or 4 up here. So I'm not loving what I did over here very much, and what I decided to do was come in and I'm going to trim about 1/8 of an inch off that side. which I think will be fine. And then to even it out on the cardstock that I'm matting it on, I'm going to turn it and trim off 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. Now we'll have a nice even border all the way around. The next thing I'm going to stamp is the Christmas blessing across the bottom. I just love the font on these stamps. I think it's so beautiful. And I'm going to line up the bottom of my stamp with the bottom of my card. And I should get a pretty straight greeting. There we go. I did get a little smudging, so let's just come on back and we'll touch it up with a Sharpie. So I wasn't able to fix that. I didn't like how it looked, and I decided to take out a tag. I just keep this envelope of extra tags that I have cut out. Some of them were pre-made and embossed. And I stamped my blessings on my tag, and I'm just going to plan to use that across the bottom, and maybe I'll raise it up with a little bit of tape or just glue it down. I haven't decided yet, so we'll figure that out after. Let's move on to highlighting some of the things in our image. So I've gone ahead and taken out my silver sparkle pen, and I am simply going to trace the top of my fence just to give it a little bit of an icy glow wherever I think the ice would form as it's getting cold and the sun is setting. We'll just highlight the tree branches a bit. And add a little sparkle to my pine trees in the back. If you wanted to, you could highlight the deer. I'm fine with how they look right now, so I'm just going to leave them as is. The next thing I'm going to do is add some berries using my liquid pearls and raspberry. Now I find that for some reason mine separates a little bit, so I really am going to give it a good shake. And we'll be able to add the berries anywhere that the branches, where there just seems to be a little bit of a gap. So if you look closely here, you can see it just sort of runs out. This is a spot where I'm going to probably put a little group of berries. And that will just camouflage that. Okay, our liquid pearls are dry to the touch, so it is time to assemble our card. So that part's done. Let's go ahead and put it on our base. Okay, now I have a label ready to go, but But before I add it to my card and have that white, that bright white against the creamy color of my watercolor cardstock, I'm just going to come in with my brush and add a little touch of green to the edges just to blend it in and soften it up a little bit. There we go. I'm going to add a piece of foam tape to the back because we're going to pop it up. And we'll just add it to the corner right here, covering up that smudge. Nobody will even know it was there. Looks like it belongs, and we're good to go. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're not already a member of our Facebook groups, please consider joining us at Del Bello's Designs Lounge for all projects made using Lavinia stamps, and Del Bello's Designs a la carte for projects made, like this one, using all other stamp lines Del Bello sells. See you soon!